Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us we are broadcasting again from Yamato headquarters, Japan. My name is Akira, and this is Megumi, my colleague, and we're talking about Tsukemen today. And again, we last night we did class on tonkotsu noodles, and Tsukemen is like totally different, like probably the opposite of tonkotsu noodles. And the distinction between that is that the biggest difference between them is that hydration ratios. Like tonkotsu noodle is being like low hydration ratio noodles, like that was like 28% that we did like yesterday. And but like today, like we are doing like 40% hydration ratio noodles. So that's like difference with 12% hydration ratio. So well, 12% like doesn't like sound like a big to you, but it's a big difference between like in terms of like noodle texture. So, um, I wrote some scribbles on this whiteboard here. To explain what I'm going to talk about, we're gonna doing what we are doing like today better. But anyway, so let's dive into it. So like tsukemen is being tsukemen like or type of like ramen dish that's been around like for like almost like 50 years in Japan, and it's amazing. Like tsukemen like basically means like that's dipping noodles, like dipping noodle dish, and dipping noodle dish like that exists actually in udon cuisine, soba cuisine, more traditional, Japanese noodle cuisines than ramen. But like dipping noodles in ramen, that's tsukemen, like kind of stood out like as a well, totally new type of, well, almost like it kind of transcends the ramen industry, but kind of like it can like stand on its own as a noodle cuisine by itself. So it's evident that like there are a lot of like tsukemen specialty shops like that, like you just specializing serving only tsukemen. And we have evaluation website where like customers rely on other people's like evaluation, like word of mouth, like people like who went to these ramen shops and they evaluate like what they had, and then so they rank them like by all these like points, right? Like there's a Yelp like in United States and like TripAdvisor, etc., right? And then we have like Japanese version of that, and the top 10, right? Top 10 of like all these ramen shops in Japan, like among, over like probably 40,000 of them, right? Um, serve actually, tsukemen, some type of tsukemen. And the top one, right? That's been around, like that's probably like top one of the best one, right? The best one, like, of a ramen shop in Japan, like that's actually getting ranked as like top in Japan, right, for probably like 5 years or something like in a row, right? I mean, that ramen shop actually specialized in serving tsukemen. So tsukemen is like really phenomenal, like, and that's like one of the probably most popular ramen dishes, and in Japan especially, right? And I think, but it's like some places like ramen culture's been around like for a while. That this type of like a ramen dish like been catching on, and we like probably start seeing like more and more like tsukemen specialty shops. It's like probably like United States somewhere, where ramen culture's been around for a while, and people appreciate this kind of noodle dishes. So um, let me get into this graph here, like chart that we've been using for from different classes, like we did on the previous classes on different subjects. So this like chart, like this horizontal axis, that's hydration ratio. So we should go to right, like that, like that's higher hydration, and the vertical line, right? Vertical line represents the protein of the flour that's used to make these noodles. So higher up, like harder, right? Um, but tsukemen, right? That's dipping noodles, and you know there are many variations of tsukemen. Like, and I literally like been to like maybe hundreds of like ramen shops like where they serve tsukemen, and but there are many variations. Like it's even like in Japan, like in different places. So I I'd say like so the variation, right? Like in terms of like hydration ratio, between like it's probably falls somewhere between like 35% to like maybe 48, maybe some like some of the ramen shops actually do like 50 over 50% hydration ratio. And that makes the noodle texture like really soft and chewy. And for protein, um, that's like around like 10, like which is like harder, harder like um, end, and probably 8 to even like something like maybe like 7%. It's almost like udon, like soft side of udon noodles. And so Tsukemen is basically like so very soft, but has some like hardness to it like as well. And then how we can achieve this kind of noodle texture is like like what we're going to talk about later. And but for the noodle size, right? Noodle size that corresponds to this the Tsukemen noodles, we like it's pretty thick, right? Compared to like other types of ramen noodles. So like that's well, it's like almost like some I haven't seen really. I mean, I've seen like Tsukemen like being pretty as thin as maybe like 1.5 millimeter or something at some ramen shops. But it's generally it's like on the thicker side, like to like 2 millimeter to like 3. That's kind of norm. And so this is what the tsukemen is, and like in terms of like noodle texture and noodle size. And then other thing that I want to mention is that like well, there are tsukemen that are straight, and there are tsukemen that are like really curly, curled up like by hand or like by machine, which I'm gonna explain later. But so that it's soft, and the noodle size wise, like it's pretty thick. Um, so we're gonna talk about like, and we're gonna walk you guys through is that like today's like 3 things you need to make authentic, delicious tsukemen noodles. And in order for you to do that, like you need 3 things. So you need proper ingredients, and you need the recipe, right? Recipe. Um, that's the instruction manual, like that tells us like how to make exactly how to make the noodles, and proper equipment. So first, ingredients. Ingredients. Um, so it's a wheat flour. Wheat flour we need, and it's what's different from like tonkotsu noodle like we talked about yesterday is that so the protein content of these flours like vary from 7 to like 12%. Like 7% like being really soft, and 12% like like harder side, like it's almost like bread flour. And but we need to look beyond protein content, like that's the product label. So that there's like a viscosity value, like how elastic the noodle texture is going to be. And there's a term like we use like amino graph value. So we have a machine over here, like in our HQ office, that like that measures this value. So like a lot of our customers like actually send us the flour they want to use like that sourced locally, and we're gonna take the sample of it, and then we put it in the machine and add water to it, like, and then just this machine like spins it, and like the flour gets stickier with that the water, right? And then this machine measures how sticky it gets, like its peak point. And the machine is called like Brabender machine. So like we need to measurement, like it's called like Brabender unit. So typically the flour with like high protein content has typically like tends to have like a lower amino graph value, like BU, Brabender units. And typically like the flour with like like kind of udon flour, which is 7 to like 9% in protein content, tends to have like higher revenues. But like we can't really tell like if like well, that is like well, sold as like udon flour, then like, you can't say that like it's guaranteed to have like high omega value. So if you have like some flour, you want to test like for this value like local, that you can get locally, then you can send some sample to us and then we can test it for you. That's free of charge. And another ingredient like that's kansi. So kansi is something you have to have, you know, for your noodle to be called ramen. That's a definition. And so potassium carbonate makes the noodle harder. Sodium carbonate makes the noodle softer. So, well, looking back this chart, right? We are supposed to make these noodles softer because the noodle size is bigger. So we want to increase the sodium carbonate ratio for this kansi. And salt, right? Salt, we want to just use it to add some taste of salt, right? And water, and that's for hydration of the flour, and then hydration ratio like, well, high. And then I'm gonna get into the hydration ratio like in recipe in a minute. And what's fascinating about like Tsukemen noodles is that like there are many variations. There are many variables that you can work with. Unlike that, well, tonkotsu noodles like we talked about yesterday, tonkotsu noodles like there's no definition of like what tonkotsu noodles like supposed to be, but like it kind of like well, people like most of the people have like kind of solid image of like what tonkotsu noodle is supposed to be. So that range of like how the tonkotsu noodles can be is like is kind of limited, but like tsukemen, there's not much like there's not that kind of like solid image like what people have to us. So like you can do like whole wheat, other types of ingredients like rye, or kind of flavoring components like some do like squiddings and other things. So it's really fun actually to construct recipes for Tsukemen noodles. All right, so let's get into recipes. So like that's a second component like you need to have like in order to be able to like make great Tsukemen noodles. So recipes. So reason why I talked about like variations of like protein and viscosity value like amino graph values previously is that like in the wheat flour is that like we tend to mix we tend to blend like different flours like more than two types of flours, each of which has like different protein content and different BU values, so the amino graph values. So in today's well, tonkotsu noodle like we're gonna I mean sorry Tsukemen noodles we're gonna make, we're gonna blend wheat flour A, protein content 11%, 700 BU, wheat flour B, protein content 8%, amino graph value 1000 BU. It's pretty elastic, and the ratio of like 60 to 40%. And so the total amount we're gonna do is 4,000 grams. And so the liquid ingredients that we have like is water. Water that's 100% like 98%, and kansi, as we talked about, right? And the salt, to add some taste of salt. And the hydration, that's 40%, and that's really high end of like. So this type of noodle is like called high hydration ratio noodles, and there's low, medium, high. And low is like tonkotsu noodles like we did yesterday, and high is kind of like these tsukemen noodles we're going to do today. So that's total of like 1,600 grams. It's liquid amount to 4,000 grams. So that's 40%. And noodle size, so that's width is 2.5 millimeter, and thickness we're gonna adjust it to like 2.2 millimeters. So kind of graphically, like the noodle is gonna look like this. So hydration, there are many variations. I said right. So like maybe like between, it's in the range like most of the tsukemen noodles out there like may fall within like this range, maybe like 35%, 45%. The noodle size it's like maybe a wide range, but like I'd say like maybe 1.8 to like 2.3 would be like kind of normal range. And the portion size is pretty big, like 150 grams or like 5.3 ounce or like 200 grams. Like that's a lot of noodles. This is a fresh noodle weight before we cooking them. So when we cook them, like this weight expands like by maybe like 1.6, 1.7 times bigger, so heavier. So that's a lot of noodles you're eating, and 7 ounce. So that's the recipe, that we are giving away today. So um, let's start looking at the actual ingredients we have, and then I'm gonna cover like rest of these like later or like during the noodle making. And so so we have so this is the yeah, kind of like a showroom that we have in our headquarter office in Kagawa Prefecture, Japan. And um, yeah, so this is where like we we'll like do the all the testing and like demos and everything. Yeah, it's like every single day actually. Like we make udon noodle, like ramen, different type of ramen noodles, soba noodles. And so this is the um, ingredients we have, so like solid ingredients, flour that we talked about. It's already mixed. Two types of flour, A and B, 11%, 8% protein content, and it's the water and currency and salt, 1% each, and 98% of liquid. All right, so let's get started. And so this is the machine that we have. Like this is the actual smallest machine we have for restaurant use, and some people use this for like small production. And it's called like Richmond One machine. Um, so for those people like who don't know much about like Japanese, like men means like that's noodles. So noodles, men means noodles, literally, and so of course like rich, right? Rich men. So uh, get that, and so this machine has this 10 kilograms mixer, like this 10 kilograms mixer. That means that you can mix up to 10 kilograms of solids, 10 kilograms of solids. So, um, you know, you can mix up to about 10 kilograms of wheat flour, like some other flour, types of flour, and then on top of it, you're adding water, right? Water, and I'd say like maximum amount of water you can add like on top of like 10 kilograms of solid ingredients is um, 4 kilograms. It's like so like you get like from one batch of like mixing, you're getting 14 kilograms of dough out of it. So first like what we did was like just mix it just for 1 minute, right? Just mix it for 1 minute and just with the solid ingredients. Just kind of like nicely mix them up, like, and then like just make sure that all the solid ingredients like well mixed, and we added the solution, right? And now we just mix it for like 4 minutes, and after that we mix it for another minute. So the total amount of time like we mix this dough is just 5 minutes. Yesterday we did tonkotsu noodles, and that was 15 minutes because it's low, hydrations. Like the flowers like has a lot less water to work with, so they need more time. And yeah, and then so make me like prepared this dough in advance, just to speed things up. And look at this dough, like it's just really well a lot like big chunks of dough, and so that's 40% hydration dough, and so that's basically like when you're touching this dough, right? It's a lot softer than tonkotsu dough, like tonkotsu noodle dough like we did yesterday. Like tonkotsu noodle dough like we did yesterday was like almost like still like powder, like just kind of wet powder, and was really hard compared to this. And So it's a soft dough, and well, big in size, right? So and then we're gonna feed it to the rollers. So this machine has like set of rollers, like two rollers. It is like well applying the pressure to the dough that's going through the rollers, right? So by controlling the roller gap, narrowing it, widening it, yeah, we're making the sheet of dough. And so the first one, like we're making, first process is called like rough forming. Just we are making rough sheet of dough. It's still pretty fragile, and then I'm able to see that like you can probably just just tear it and tear it up, right? Like just use your hand, but that's a start. And so we're gonna make rough sheet of dough first, right? It's kind of like kind of forcing this dough to the shape of a sheet first, but like without really like really like applying like too much of pressure to not to like damage the gluten structure can be developed inside the dough. So that's why like you need to adjust the roller gap accordingly um, to the size of the dough like we're dealing with. And so this is 40% hydration ratio dough, which is like pretty big in like dough size. So right now like we just see the roller gap to 2 millimeter. So 2 millimeter roller gap, and then it's going through that. The dough is going through that to be like made to like 2 millimeter thickness of the dough sheet. And so with this machine, like you just keep constantly like feeding the dough right to the rollers, and then and that's so first we did rough forming, right? And then the mixer side, that's after 4 minutes, and we didn't add like all of the liquid all at once, but we just added like just 2/3 of it, and then we're gonna do like add like the rest of the water, and then mix for another minute to finish up the mixing. So that's pretty easy. Like so, it's just pour it onto the mixing lid, which has these little holes, right? And so little holes like allows this like all this liquid to like be drip through like this little by little. We add it to the flour dough. It'll be mixed inside. That enables the good hydration. So after rough forming, and we are going to separate it in two sheets. Running two sheets, right? And so what we're doing is like basically we're gonna compound these two separate sheets of dough into one, right, through the roller. And by doing that, we're sort of like strengthening the dough. Uh, after like rough forming, like the dough is still like pretty fragile, so like we want to make it firm. We want to like we want to like work the dough right, developing the gluten structure inside. We want to have like that like kind of firmness and the chewiness, like the elasticity, the dough texture, right? So this combining process like essential. And on purpose, we are going slow, like in this sheeting process, and you can because like we want to apply like really good pressure to the dough, and it's like we want to go slow, and you can easily adjust the speed of this rolling sheeting process by that volume, and yeah, and so just make sure that you go slow in this process so that the dough is getting like a sufficient amount like pressure, like getting worked up, and then to develop like I don't know, really good gluten structure inside. So that was a combining process, the first one, and we're doing like actually really like usually we do it like twice, and to make sure that we have like uniform enough like dough, and so that's so like every time like she does this like round of sheeting, like she changes the roller gap, and it's very easy to do it like with the wheel. And from this point on, we want to start the dusting process, like because this is a 40% hydration ratio, and like it's really sticky, wet and sticky. So we want to, well, from this point on, we want to start dusting because um, from this point, like just gonna thin it, right? We're not gonna like stick them together. Um, like combining process, like basically like we're combining two to one, right? But like from this point on, like the gluten is like fully developed, and then all we have to do is just thin this like single sheet of dough. So um, we're just gonna start dusting to make sure it's not gonna stick. And you can definitely, well, you can actually like control the like amount of dusting you can do depending on the hydration ratio with dough. Of course, like higher the hydration ratio, the more you have to dust to make sure it's not gonna stick. So that's 3 millimeter roll gap. Now she's start thinning it, and so from this point on, then you can speed up the sheeting process too. You can go faster. This gluten structure like fully developed, and then all you have to do is thin it, right? Thin it to the final thickness where we can start cutting. So you can go faster. And now it's sheeting 2 millimeter roller gap. So it's going through a 2 millimeter wide gap, but like when we actually measure the thickness of it, like actually it's 2.6567. So there's this difference between the actual thickness and roller gap. It's 0.67 millimeter difference. So basically, the dough just bounces back right after it's going through that roller gap, and then so by zero point 0.6, zero point 0.7, so we want to start cutting, and the cutter that we're going to use is has this width of like 2.5 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter, and then um, we want to, well, want to have like noodles that shape like rectangular and, well, 2.5 being width, and then you want to have like smaller thickness. And this is the kind of cutter we use, and that's like 2.5 millimeter. Each groove is 2.5 millimeter in width, and so we want each noodle strand to have like 2.2 millimeter thickness and 2.5 millimeter width. And so thickness we control by the roller gap, right? And then the width is controlled by the roll cutter, which is fixed. And so, we expect that noodle thickness to be bounced back by 0.7 or 0.6, right? So we set that roller gap to 1.5. It's going through, when it's going through like 1.5 roller gap, then it's supposed to expand back by 0.7, so it should come out to be like 2.2, which is the ideal thickness for this cutter size. So I'm gonna start cutting, and we kind of talked about like portion size, and then the portion size is controlled by the length, which you can control with this volume length, and just set it like to shorter, to have a smaller portion size, serving size, and set it like longer to have like bigger portion size. And it's really up to your ramen shop. And but as a like normal Tsukemen noodles, yeah, 200 grams, and that's yeah, very healthy. I mean, good volume, to have like for Tsukemen dish. So yeah, but like smaller portion, maybe like may start from like maybe 150 grams, and because it's like production cost of ramen noodles, like noodles in general, or is like it's really low. I mean, you know, with this Tsukemen noodles, like maybe one serving, like you can make, like with maybe 20 cents or something. Because like, if you think about it, like it's water and flour and kansui. You don't really use like a lot of kansui like for one serving noodles, and and there's salt, right? So the like material cost like is not really, and um, and it's if you use like commercial noodle machine like this, and like labor cost is not that much either. Like when you add all the up, right, total come to maybe like 20 cents or some per serving. So so increasing the serving size by 30 grams, 40 grams, 50 grams, even like 100 grams wouldn't affect you know your production cost by much. So, but that's how you. And then could you make like curly noodles by hand, just one of them maybe. So unlike tonkotsu noodles we did yesterday, because this is a high hydration noodle, like being soft, um, it's kind of, well, it's, yeah, it's definitely easier to make them curly, curly noodles. And there are two ways to do it, and by hand like this, and by machine, but putting like so like certain attachment parts in the back of the cutter to make them curly. So it's one way to do it, and some like real famous ramen shops actually do it in front of customers, and by order, and then yeah. So you get that like random, like sort of like texture, like kind of interesting texture, and the randomness in texture. Um, so that's so. Let's wrap up like by walking through like summarizing this production process. So we skipped the part like weighing, measure everything by weight, like measure like each of the ingredients by weight. But this is actually the most important process in all of this like production process. Because if you know, well, measure something like make some mistake like in measuring something, water amount or something, but like, and then, the rest of these process like wouldn't matter. So this is the most important part. Measure everything by weight, not by volume, by weight. And mixing we did, right? It's like it's a basic hydration process, like so it's 5 minutes. And so we did a resting process, like post resting process. That's usually goes like, depending on the temperature you're doing, well, ambient temperature maybe like being like 25 degrees Celsius, and some like 22, maybe 20 to 25, then 30 to 60 minutes. Basically, the higher the temperature, shorter the resting process. And rough forming, like we did like a 2 millimeter wall gap. The combining process we did twice. And as an option, like there's a resting process, like after combining process, like you wrap the dough, right, in the plastic bag or something, and then let it sit for an hour or so outside. And so and then thinning, and to 2.2 millimeter, we adjusted the roll gap to like get the final thickness 2.2, and cutting, well, with that like 2.5 millimeter cutter, and then portioning, we adjusted to 150 grams per serving. And for storage, and this is the third sort of like resting or aging process that we can do. So by doing that, like we are essentially aiming for better noodle texture. And so for that to happen, like we should control the for temperature inside a refrigerator to 15 degrees Celsius, like or 59 Fahrenheit. And then if you don't care about like aging or anything, like you should lower that temperature, maybe like to 10, like 5 or something. Then the noodles are good for up to 2 weeks, right? Then kind of want to go over like this. So noodle soup, like, so this is the evolution of noodle. I mean, we have like blog articles like on the website, Noodle Master Lab, and then there's an article where I said like we have like ramen revolution. So like we started out with the like noodle soup, like in a regular ramen soup noodle, like we did like in yesterday, like tonkotsu ramen, right? So the soup and noodle quantity ratio, like it's like usually one serving like 300 grams and over, and the noodles amount of noodles like 100 grams over, right? But when Tsukemen came out, we have like a lot less soup to make or serve, right? Like because it's Tsukemen, like just dip it in smaller bowl, and noodles, but like to sort of like compensate that for that like small amount of soup, like we serve like bigger portion of noodles. So like noodles have to be like really good, like it can kind of match that kind of dense, thick soup that's dipping salt, a soup. And then there's another one like that's called like mazame, like that's soupless dish. And there's not even soup, right? Like soup less. So, but like instead of that, like for the flavoring, seasoning, we have like sauce. But like the amount of that, like it's just 30 grams plus, right? And the noodle size, 150 grams. So clearly, like the cost of like soup production is a lot higher than like cost like noodle production. And as we kind of evolve, right, and like to have Tsukemen, to serve Tsukemen, but like maybe we can delight customers at the same level or like maybe higher, like, for some customers, right, by serving, like noodle dish that costs actually less, right? But by serving like, noodles, more of noodles, um, so it's kind of interesting, like how it's going, like, and then, and definitely, it's a lot easier for you to be able like, well, use Tsukemen and Mazemen as like delivery products than noodle soup dish, right? I think like delivery takeout like would be like more like profitable business, like more like well, more demand, right? I think there's gonna be more demand, like you probably days to come. So for those of you who haven't served the Tsukemen or Mazami yet, please consider doing that. And so yeah, so that was Tsukemen, and so there are different shape and size. There are many variations like curry noodles, and then this is the where I wanted to explain, like, so when you cook the noodles, right, um, this part, so this part, right, it's like in the side, like what the um, where it's carved like with the cutter, so like it's very rough surface. So that's where the water and the soup like kind of penetrates into the noodles. So the noodles like get squished like from the side, right? So when it's cooked in the boiling water, it turns like the shape turns out to be like this. It's like kind of dents, right? All these dents in the four sides, and these dents actually help carry more soup. So that's why we have shape like this, like so. The thickness is smaller than breadth, like all the time, like so. Then we could have like kind of square shape, but like with the four sides dented like this to carry more soup. Like when people eat the biting the noodles. So that's what we recommend for the shape of the noodles. And of course, like there's a flat noodles for Tsukemen too. So, but like there are many versions of Tsukemen. It's really interesting, like to think about kind of Tsukemen noodles that you can make, and of course, like kind of depending on kind of soup you have, um, it's very interesting. So I think we can do like more and more classes in Tsukemen, but just for today's class, that's what we have, and yeah, and we're going to like do more this kind of class, like kind of make it short and just focus on like just one thing. It could be like ramen, like udon, or like even like soup, or like some other things that you may be interested in. So if you have some subject that you want to learn, and interested in like kind of like for us to be doing for you guys, please send us some emails, like comments, and we will like really appreciate, like we will reflect that in the next class. And if you haven't already, like please subscribe to our channel, and so thank you so much for watching, and we'll yeah, see you guys in the next class. So thank you so much. Bye bye.